Culinary Treasure Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. I am so excited today. I have been a fan of Pam Walden for quite a number of years. You're an amazing winemaker. I love your wine. I get access to a lot of wine. I'm blessed and really lucky that way. And yours is one of those few wines where I actually will be in an event and I will buy a bottle or two of your wine and take it home. I've loved your stuff for a long time. So you are the founder and the owner and the winemaker that makes Willful Wine happen. That's the name of your winery and your company, which we'll talk about how it got there. But thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Stephen.
All right, questions we ask everybody in all the podcasts. Where were you born?
I was born in Leicester in the UK. It's 100 miles north of London.
Now, Leicester, I would think that would be spelled L-E-S-T-E-R, Leicester.
No, it's L-E-I-C-E-S-T-E-R. Americans mostly pronounce it Leicester, but it's not. It's Leicester.
Leicester, okay. And that's what, about 100 miles north of London?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in Leicester, Beaumont Leys Secondary School.
Beaumont Leys Secondary School. Mm-hmm. And as the case is, I know from when I have guests on from overseas, no mascot at your high school?
No mascot at the high school. We just went to school and were glad to finish, and that was kind of it.
So you made a comment to me about you've observed the difference in pageantry between England and the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic. You know, if people kind of go to England to see all the history and the pageantry of, years gone by. But on a day-to-day basis, I feel like Americans are much more involved with just pageantry general, like with mascots and with the holidays and how much, decorating goes on with every single holiday. It's like you just wrap up one and then you're putting something else out,
I love it. All right. So tell me where your wine journey began. Not your winemaking journey, but your wine journey began. The first wines you were drinking.
My wine journey began when I was underage drinking sweet Riesling in the UK.
German Riesling?
Yes.
And what's the official name for that?
Liebfraumilch. I guess it's kind of like the equivalent of White Zinfandel.
So you're underage and you're drinking that. That's where it starts.
Yeah. It was easier to get alcohol those days.
That makes sense. Yeah, you didn't need to just kind of go into the pub and you could get what you want.
Yeah, maybe put some eyeshadow on first.
If you look the right age, they just let you do it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, we grew up in a different world, didn't we?
I'm not saying it's right.
You're just saying how it was. Okay, so we're going to kind of unpack your journey, in a little bit of stages. But you're at this point in your journey, I'm going to pick up the story right now. We'll go back in time later, but right now in 1997, you're with Aaron. Aaron was your partner for many, many years. And Aaron, in 1997, starts working at a winery here in the Northwest, here in the Oregon area.
Yep.
And he does wine in 97, Crush, 98, 99, and in 2000, you guys are a couple. And he says, hey, I'm working full-time in a winery, but I want to start our own label of wine. And we're going to do Crush nights and weekends. And you're going to be promoted to help me be a winemaker. Is that kind of how it went?
Pretty much,
and
yeah.
What was the name of that label?
That was Daedalus Cellars.
Daedalus Cellars. And you guys did that. 2000 was your first Crush.
Yep.
And you guys made Daedalus Cellars wine 2000 through 2009.
Yeah.
So that's your first experience really in making wine was the 2000 Crush. Mm-hmm. What was that like?
It was a trip. I remember learning how to weld for the first time. I didn't realize that winemaking was so much about plumbing. But plumbing is a big part of winemaking. I really enjoyed it. I remember 2001 more than 2000. 2001, we were very fortunate to be able to get some grapes from a couple of Archery Summit vineyards, Arcus and Red Hills Estate. And I remember, Arcus in particular, hanging over the fermenter and just smelling this fermenter. It smelled purple. I just fell in love with the ferments. So I used to just really enjoy just the monitoring the fermentations as they went along, as they evolved.
So my experience, I've never done a Crush, but I've watched a lot of winemaking happen. If your husband is nights and weekends, but has a full-time job somewhere else during Crush, that means you're probably primarily the winemaker, really, as far as the work goes. I mean, I bet you put a lot of work in during Crush those years.
I did. So there were other winemakers at Medici Winery where we were making the wine. And one of them, Boyd Teagarden, nicknamed as Doodless Cellars because they never saw Aaron, but he was very much present. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was just following instruction.
But you learned a tremendous amount during that time.
Yeah, I did. I learned a lot. I was very lucky.
That is phenomenal. Okay, and right, wrong, or indifferent. The one cool thing that happened during that time between 2000 and 2009, just part of the story I want people to know about because it's a delicious part of the story. You guys started the Jezebel Label.
Yes, we did.
And that's a wine that you still make, a label you still make today, Jezebel. At the end of this podcast, we're going to talk about 3 of your wines, and one of them will be a Jezebel. So that's kind of where Jezebel came along. Why the name Jezebel? Where'd that come from?
They are easy wines. I call my Jezebel Pinot, I call it Pinot in a push-up bra. It's friendly.
It's got an appealing price tag.
Yes.
It's easy drinking. I've had lots of Jezebel. Okay, I get it. I'm sold.
Pinot in a push-up bra, but it doesn't have a short skirt as well. It's not a total sellout. It's got nice kind of structure, and it's got acidity, and it's got balance.
So it's not a complete tart. Is that a phrase they say? Is that an English phrase? And a complete tart? Mm-hmm. I don't know where that came from, but... Okay, so that's where Jezebel started. So 2009, you and Aaron, kaputz, it's over. That's just the way it went. And then in 2011, you got a crazy idea and you started your own winery. You're going to make wine. You're going to become a winemaker, and you call it Willful Wines. First, you're nuts. I think, and I love it. I think that's amazing for people to set out and do that. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start my own winery. That's incredible. But where did the name Willful come from? Why Willful Wineries?
It's willful because I'm willful, and so is Pinot Noir. It kind of does what it wants to. It's a notoriously capricious grape to work with, and I really like to use native fermentation, so I feel like I support that even more so.
Notoriously
capricious.
That is you need to start using that as a hashtag. That is amazing. I love that, notoriously capricious. And that kind of fits a little bit about your energy as well. And you, some people say some of the best Pinot Noir in the world is grown here in Oregon. Right, wrong, different. Some people actually believe that. And we grow a lot of Pinot Noir, and you love Pinot Noir. So you're like happier than a pig in mud getting to be here with these grapes and make this wine. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And the fun thing we'll talk about is you always find some special, interesting grape every year. You do kind of like a one-off, and we'll talk about that. But Pinot was kind of almost your bread and butter. I mean, and you do it really, really well.
Thank you.
And no offense to any winemakers, none shall be named, but as much as people love to celebrate Pinot Noir in Oregon, and I've had a lot of amazing ones, there's also a lot of really average ones. They're kind of like, okay, you got the grape and you kind of did it. Whereas you seem to be able to, I think of you almost like a cowboy from Wyoming, that can handle those wild horses, and kind of get them tamed. And you seem to be able to take that grape and just kind of get it down into just an incredible, beautiful wine. It's a science, I know, but I think it's also an art. There's some artistry to winemaking, particularly for the Pinot grape, right?
I think it's there's definitely a science, and I like to do my juice analysis and know what I'm working with. And I think it's also really important to get good source materials. That's why I like working with my growers and go visiting the vineyards over the summer. But it also, I'm very hands-on with winemaking. I'm a small producer. I like being a small producer, so I can continue to be very hands-on with it. And I think that's one of the ways that makes it feasible for me to be doing native fermentation and to be doing longer cold soaks and some whole cluster fermentation, because they are slightly more risky winemaking practices. And it means, and if I'm really able to monitor the fermentations really closely, then it helps me kind of keep on top of that.
Okay, so going back to 2011 when you launched and started Willful, your first crush was 2011. Coming up on your 2020 will be your 10th crush. We'll talk about that in a bit. But one of the things I know you loved is you loved wines. Okay, it makes sense to be a winemaker. But another thing that was really appealing to you about opening your own winery was the flexible schedule. I don't think people realize that winemaking is both kind of really tyrannical certain times of the year and then a lot of flexibility other times of the year.
So I'm a full-time single parent. I've got 2 teenage boys, and having a flexible schedule is pretty essential to making that work. And then my new space is also very close to my house, which is super helpful. So with online school starting this fall, it means I could be able to come do some work, go check in on them, see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then come back, work some more. So it's pretty handy.
And other than crush, which is all hands on deck, you are really, really focused, lots and lots of hours. Winemaking is a full-time job, but lots of flexibility in those months that aren't during crush.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like working for myself. You know, I think I told you I was at one point considering being a massage therapist. And then I realized that I was going to have to be there every time somebody set up an appointment. And that if it was a really nice day at the beach, I can just goof off and go to the beach for the day.
I love that. I same thing here. I love being self-employed. I will gladly work, honestly, some days 12, 18 hours in a day, but there's other days where I'll do some chores and some errands and then I don't have to work the entire day, and because it's just how it worked out. And I love the flexibility of that schedule.
Yep.
I just, hats off. The self-employed lifestyle to me is just fantastic. Okay, there's a couple of really amazing stories that really shaped your wine journey, your winemaking journey. The first one, I'm going to go back in time. See how I kind of jump around I feel like I may be Doctor Who, a time traveler going back and forth in time. Do you know who Doctor Who is?
Of course I know who Doctor Who is. I think we've seen every single episode right from when did it start in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love me some Doctor Who. I couldn't resist. So 1999, you and Aaron bought some dirt. You bought some land, which, I grew up on 260 acres. So in Southern California, rocks and scrub brush, but still lots of land to run around on as a young kid, which was amazing. So you bought some dirt in 1999. You planted grapes in 2008. You tended those grapes, those vineyards in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, you got a harvest. Mm-hmm. You got a harvest in 12. You got a harvest in 13. So that's 6 years of working those grapes in that vineyard for 3 years of harvest. I tell people all the time, you reap in a different season than you sow. You do the work now and you get the reward later. Planting grapes in 2008 to get to actually planting vineyards in 2008, get grapes in 2011. That's definitely a different season. But that experience of having your own vineyard for a while, that phase of your life, that season of your life, if you will, really shaped your winemaking journey. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. I'm very passionate about grape growing. My happy place is 6 o'clock in the morning on a summer morning, working in the vines, for sure.
And then now when you go out to a vineyard with a grower, you partner with your growers, and I know you like to work with similar growers that have a similar mindset. You've actually done what they're doing, and you know more what to look for than maybe some winemakers that don't have that experience.
I think, yes, maybe so. I think it's an asset. Like I said, I think it's really important to get good source material. I like working with vineyard owners and great vineyard managers that I feel like it's a partnership. That obviously the important thing is long-term health of the vineyard and sustainability. But also, what you do in the vineyard can have obviously an impact on flavors. Do you strip all of the leaves? Do you leave a little bit of shading there? How much crop level do you leave? And then, of course, when you decide to pick, all of those things are things that will impact the wine ultimately. So it's nice to have somebody that you feel like it's a bit of a conversation.
And I suspect some of them really like someone that actually understands what they're saying because you've actually done it. You have a bit of a clue.
Yeah, and then and the other way as well, I understand how expensive it is to farm vines, and if something doesn't need to be done, then I won't push for it either, because I think it's a balance. I want them to make money as well. Maybe once in a while at least. It's really hard as a grape grower.
I can imagine. Okay, so then another amazing thing happened. So we went to 1999. Now I'm going to go back to 1996. We're going to hop in. What the heck is Doctor Who?
The TARDIS. The
TARDIS, yes, the TARDIS. I was thinking, what's her name? Because I know the TARDIS is a she. But we're going to hop in the TARDIS, and we're going to head back 3 years to 1996. So prior to 96, professionally in your 20s, this will blow people's minds. You were in television production, TV production in London.
Yeah, I was Mrs. Career, totally. I was very driven. I was actually, I've had my first producer title. I think I was 25.
Wow. So you're like hoity-toity making television in London.
Yep. I produced I was working for a movie producer, and I ended up producing a documentary on the history of the British sex film.
Amazing. Okay, but then television's loss, our wine lovers' gain. Things unraveled, and you left the television business. Let's see. You played the piano. Where did you play the piano?
In the Channel Islands in Guernsey.
Guernsey, that's the islands between
England and France.
England and France, yeah. Okay. Then you took some time off and you went through Southeast Asia. And then you had a friend that said, hey, my parents have a countryside restaurant. Now, what do you call it?
A ferme auberge.
A ferme auberge? That just sounds amazing. I want a ferme auberge. Although it sounds like a good cheese to my ears, but I don't know.
They made cheese as well, actually.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
So my parents have this great countryside restaurant 100 miles inland from Bordeaux in France. And because you are adventurous as all get out, you said, sign me up. I'll go help out in the countryside restaurant for the summer. So and you'd never been to France before.
Oh, I'd been to France lots of times. I took myself to France for the first time when I was 16.
Oh my goodness. Had you been to Bordeaux? I
told you I was precocious.
Had you been to Bordeaux before?
I had not been to Bordeaux before.
Okay, that's what I was. Yeah. Okay, so it's your first time in Bordeaux. You had 100 miles inland, and you're there for the summer, and that's where Aaron enters the picture. So tell me about this wine and your first date and this cool trip you had, because this trip and this summer, 100 miles inland from Bordeaux, that also really shaped your wine journey.
Yeah. So Aaron and the friend that he was traveling with, they came for lunch. It was a Sunday. And they hung out there for about 4 hours. And it was time for us to wrap up. And they said, do you want to go to the Bordeaux vineyards with us? And so I thought, sure, why not? I got the next 2 days off of work. And that was our first date. The Bordeaux Youth Hostel for the first night. So the next night we had dinner at, it was a roadside restaurant. I think it was somewhere outside of Pauillac. And he was trying to impress me, obviously. And he bought a 1981 Pomerol. And it was the first wine that I'd ever had that was like really nice.
We're no longer drinking sweet German Riesling.
No.
We've moved on.
I mean, this is like beyond the Cru Beaujolais Italian wines that I'd kind of progressed to. This was like this other experience. I mean, it's Pomerol, right? So it's got this like sexy kind of sort of like weight that sort of holds, just like lays on your tongue. And it's like velvet, and it's juicy, and it's purple, and it's just like,
I wish we were filming right now and people could see the joy, the true joy. I mean, you love wine. If people could just see what I was seeing, they would realize that that's that secret ingredient that goes into a winemaker's wine is the love they put into it. I mean, you got to have grapes, but you got to have that love.
That's one of the things that I love about Pinot Noir, as well as the texture and native fermentation as well. You get this lovely kind of silky sort of supple texture in your mouth.
So that summer you were in Bordeaux drinking amazing wine, and you also went to Burgundy that summer, drank amazing wine.
Yes. So Bordeaux we went to in the April, I guess, and then we went to Burgundy in June. And it was a really different experience, both of them. Bordeaux was, my experience at least, was much bigger industry, marketing departments, and very nice art. And Burgundy we just met with the actual winemakers, and they were just pouring wine off the top of a barrel. And the wines were amazing and just beautiful. It was just a really different experience going to the two regions.
What an incredible journey to shape your future. You probably had no idea that years later you would be a winemaker with your own brand and your own wines in a wine region that rivals that. I mean, some people say that Portland and Oregon is one of the best winemaking regions in the world. What a wonderful journey from there to here. It's just kind of crazy.
Yep.
Okay, speaking of an incredible journey, fall 2020, this is going to be your 10th crush for Willful Wines, your own company, your own. First, I know some cool things happened earlier this year, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, what's it feel like? 10 years, your own business, your 10th crush coming up.
It feels good. 10 years, I still second guess myself. I still am learning something new every year. And that's one of the things that I enjoy about winemaking is every year it's something different. It's never dull. And it feels really good to be in my own space and to have a little bit more control maybe over things.
Okay, and I just must say, you are an incredible, if I haven't said it yet, I'll probably say it again, but you are an incredible winemaker with a gift. And I've had been lucky to have lots of wine in my journey, and yours is top notch. Okay, so your 10th year, Willful Wine, this crush 2020 is going to be very different than the other ones of before. What did you do in February of this year?
I took on a lease for this space.
So we're sitting in this cool space. You've got this little area that people can come drink wine. And then you've got this big warehouse area. And what is going to happen in that warehouse area? So
we are going to bring grapes in. I'm going to have a refrigerated container at the front for cold soaks. And then we'll be bringing the grapes in. They'll be sorted on the conveyor there. And got the destemmer, which I may or may not use, depending on what I feel like those grapes want. We will put them into fermenters. We'll ferment everything here on that open space in the floor. I've got the little tiny little press there to press everything off. So this is it. This is where production is happening this year.
Okay, I love what you said. It is what a true winemaker says. We may or may not use the destemmer depending on what the grapes want. Because if you listen to the grapes, they will tell you what kind of wine they want to be and how they want to get there. Am I crazy?
Absolutely, and very much so, I think, with Pinot Noir. You know, Pinot Noir is one of the most expressive grapes that you can work with. It expresses a sense of terroir more than any other varietal, I think. And I try to do everything with native fermentation and also with, being responsive to what the grapes want, to try and, make the very most of that expression.
Yeah, because that's exactly, it is a willful grape. I love the whole idea that Willful Wine, you are a willful winemaker and you're kind of just guiding it, helping it get where it wants to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to do all of that cool stuff and then you're going to put it in barrels right here.
Yep, they'll be here.
You'll have about 150 barrels. How does that feel like? I've got my own space. I'm going to be here. It must be a whole different experience emotionally.
Yes, it feels like home. And that feels really good.
Nice. Okay. Home for the first time. I like that. I celebrate. I cannot wait. I'll probably stop by and take photos or something. I'm just excited. And then you have to do some special thing next year when you sell the wine from your 10th crush, your first, the first one here. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Okay. We're going to talk about 3 of your wines. And there's something really special. We're going to talk about 1 Jezebel and 2 Willful Wines. And just to give people a little bit of, what do they call a preview? There's something amazing about your Willful Wines that's not just what's in the bottle, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, Jezebel Pinot Noir. Tell me about this wine.
So the Jezebel, like I said, I call that my Pinot in a push-up bra. It's the Jezebel wines generally. I've got 3 wines currently under the Jezebel label. They are fruit-forward, approachable wines. They're wines that you can drink with or without food. They're well-balanced. They've got good acidity, so they're good food partners, but they've got a lot of primary fruit on the attack, and they're very pleasurable just by themselves if you just want a glass of wine. So the Jezebel Pinot Noir is 2018. It's 58% Willamette Valley fruit, 42% Southern Oregon grapes. I like using Southern Oregon grapes for this particular wine. I think you get some more, very nice primary fruit flavors on the attack, some really sort of like juicy characteristics. It's got bright red fruit flavors, and it's just kind of yummy. And it's a really nice wine for $18.
And what are the other 2 Jezebel wines that you do besides the Pinot Noir?
I got a Jezebel Chardonnay that's tank fermented, very crisp, aromatic, a Chardonnay. And then the Jezebel Blanc is a co-fermentation of Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and Pinot Gris.
Oh, and that's a very good wine. Okay, so the Willful Wines, there's something really fun about them, and that is the label. And I don't mean the label like the brand, because, winemakers say, I have my own label. It's Willful Wines. Just that's the brand to us, non-wine people. But I mean the label that's actually on the bottle. They have just these beautiful drawings on them. Where did this come from?
That is the very talented Chris Naud down in Salem. He creates a lot of wine labels for people. And I, gave him an idea of what I wanted from my label in terms of, what I wanted it to communicate. And he came back with several different options. And I just love the pictures. I love the images of willfulness that he created. And I like the whimsical nature of it. I think they're quite elegant, but they've got some real personality too.
So it's Chris Noud, Noud.
Yep.
Oh yeah, he is phenomenal. And so the two wines that we're going to talk about today have on it this bird cage, and it looks like a bird cage and then a bird, and it looks like the bird has busted out of the bird cage. Kind of like to me it just screams you. It screams willful, like I am set free. I am on my own. Why did the cage bird sing? I don't know, because it broke out.
Pretty much.
And then, so my recommendation for people when they come visit or when they check you out online, because you'll ship wine, right?
Yeah, sure.
So it doesn't matter where you live. So here's how I think you should interact with Pam.
Unless you live in Utah.
Yes, unless you live in Utah.
Sorry.
Just get an address, a friend's address in Vegas, and drive down to Vegas. It's not that far, depending on where in Utah you're at. I made that trip once from Salt Lake City all the way down to Vegas, seeing clients all there. So that's a story for a different time. Different place, Utah. I'll put it that way. So my recommendation, the way people should interface with your brand, is they should get 3 cases of wine. They should get a Jezebel. Mm-hmm. They should get the Willful Pinot Noir, because that is like just an amazing jewel in the crown that is Willful. And then every year you have 1 or 2 different things that won't be around. It's kind of like brewers make a special beer they'll never make again. You may or may not make it again, depending. Tempranillo. Sometimes you have Tempranillo. Sometimes you have Cab Franc. Sometimes you have a Cab Sauv. Sometimes you have a Cab Merlot blend. And so people need to buy those 3 cases. What's the special one? What's the special one? And here's the fun thing about the special one. It gets its own unique label. Not the bird cage, but something different and something fun. And I love the creativity there. It just really resonates with me.
Thank you. I like your analogy.
Good. I'm glad you do. Okay. So they need to remember, what's the special one? I heard the podcast. What's the special one this year? Because who knows what cool, fun grape you'll find. What's the, there's a Noir, Pinot Noir. No, there's a Baco Noir. Uh-huh. Baco Noir is an amazing grape that you can't find it anymore. But who knows? Maybe in 2022 you'll get a hold of some Baco Noir grapes.
Maybe.
And then 2023, when people they call you up or they stop by, what's the special one in 2023? The cool grape you found in 2022. You and I don't know what it'll be yet. It'll be something amazing. You need a case of that, a case of the Willful Pinot, and then a case of whatever Jezebel is speaking to him at the time, because you got to have the easy drinking wine.
You need a wine for all occasions.
Okay, let's talk about your. We're going to talk about the Willful Chardonnay and the Willful Pinot Noir. Let's start with the Willful Chardonnay. Talk to me about that one.
Sure. So I've been getting grapes from Stewart Vineyard in the Ribbon Ridge AVA, and I was getting some Pinot from them, and they have 0.6 acres of Chardonnay planted. So it roughly yields about 2 tons of Chardonnay. And so I made this Chardonnay. It's neutral barrel fermentation. So we pressed it off, fermented the juice in neutral barrel. So you got a nice kind of rounded, sort of soft sort of texture. But they were neutral barrels, so they've been used more than 3 times. So there's no oak flavors coming from that. You just got this nice kind of rounded sort of texture.
A very creamy mouthfeel in the Chardonnay.
Yeah. So that's I do batonnage with both the Pinots and with the Chardonnay. Also, I'll stir every day during primary fermentation.
And what's that phrase again?
Batonnage.
Batonnage. I love that phrase. Yeah. It sounds like you're doing battle, but
I have this little kind of stick. It looks a little like a golf putter that I shove in the barrel and kind of stir it around. It stirs up the leaves, so you bring the leaves up into suspension, and it just kind of helps to kind of add a little bit more weight and texture to the mid palate.
And particularly with Chardonnay, that's one of the things that contributes to a creamy mouthfeel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's still got some nice acidity too. So I think that's really important with any wine.
Yes, I agree. Okay, now, Oregon is an amazing place for Pinot. You make an amazing Pinot. Tell me about Willful Pinot Noir.
So my Willful Pinot Noir, I use, it's all small lots. So I use these, macro fermenter bins that fit about 1.5 tons in them. All hand punch downs. It's all native fermentation. Native yeast, I feel like give you a more complex wine. I think they give you a better expression of the terroir because you're not adding a manufactured, yeast that's supposed to do a certain thing to this flavor profile.
So for those that don't know, what is native fermentation?
So, with my Jezebel lots, I will inoculate with the manufactured yeast. So I pitch in the yeast, and that's what causes primary fermentation. And the yeast that I choose are ones that are created, going to give it a nice kind of plush mouthfeel and some nice juicy primary fruit flavors, which I think is really important for that wine. For the Willful wines, I don't add anything. I add a little bit of sulfur when the grapes first come in. I add nutrients if I need to assist the fermentation for any reason. And other than that, I don't add anything. So it's very much a hands-off, let the grapes do their own thing.
And you get the fermentation part, it's impacted by the terroir.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever yeasts are naturally occurring in the vineyard, those are causing primary fermentation.
Oh, and then you really do get the local flavor. Okay, you were telling us.
And it gives you a better texture as well. With native fermentations, you tend to get a very supple, sort of silky texture as well. So you get a really nice mouthfeel with it.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about your Pinot?
I started doing some whole cluster fermentation as well, which I really like. It gives you kind of a little bit more grip to the tannins, a spicy sort of sandalwood characteristic, and tends to give you very floral aromas. And I don't use a bunch of new oak. I feel like my growers are working really hard to make the best grapes possible. And I want to taste that. I don't want to overlay it with a whole bunch of oak flavors. So I prefer to kind of focus on the fruit from the vineyards.
Now, I love wine. I love wine with and without food. And the nice thing about your Pinot is I can just have a glass of it. I don't even need to be having a meal. I can just enjoy it, a nice conversation with friends. It's fantastic that way, but it also pairs extremely well. See, I've had it with salmon. I've had it with mushrooms. It does really well with both. Am I wrong here?
Oh, no, those are classic Pinot Noir pairings.
And you make, they're classic, but they're classic for a reason because they just work. And if someone likes those classic pairings, they like those flavors. If they want a top-rate, first-class Oregon Pinot Noir, yours is one of the ones to get. There's a lot of them, but I like to celebrate small producers and maybe I was lucky enough to get I was able to get the 2020 Willful Wine Pinot. Well, you better because it's going to sell out.
Thank you.
All right. It has been a delight to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to come by Crush and take photos and stuff just because I love the experience. I'm so excited about what you've put together. And just because I like to follow up stories, maybe next year, next summer before Crush next year, 2020, we'll have you on the podcast and kind of talk about maybe some special grapes you're eyeing and what it was like, all the madness you're about to enter. Enter the vortex that is Crush. But I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks very much, Stephen.
Cheers.